I'm Grant Hardy. You're listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio. Tonight, January 20th, on CTV, the second season of the popular original crime drama Sight Unseen is premiering. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to speak with the two lead actors of the show, Dolly Lewis and Agam Darshi, ahead of the premiere, and we chatted about developing characters that represent disabilities in an accurate way and what we can look forward to in season 2 of the show. In a few moments, we're going to be playing some clips from that interview and getting to know Dolly and Agam, along with their characters, Tess and Sunny. Here with me today to talk about the show is communication specialist at AMI, Greg David, who watched season 1 of the show and can even preview season 2 with us a little bit as well. Hey, Greg, how's it going?
I'm great, Grant. How are you?
I'm doing well. You are a TV aficionado. I think you watch the majority of the shows that come out. You're pretty familiar.
Yeah. I'm great at a party because I can talk a lot about TV shows that I watch, or maybe what you should be watching. I think my family would say that I'm boring at this point because I talk about TV all the time, but happy to come on and share it with your audience today.
No, that's super. And is this a pretty busy time with the new year for new cool new shows coming out?
Yeah, Grant, it used to be that, with conventional television like CBC and
Mm-hmm.
CTV and NBC, it used to be that the fall and the winter, like September, October was really busy. And then through Christmas, it would be quiet. And then January, it would ramp right up again. But with all the streaming services like Netflix and Prime Video and Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus,
Mm-hmm.
there's new TV shows debuting like year round. So it's really busy all of the time. And there isn't enough time in the day to watch all of the shows that are available, but happy to be able to talk about this one because it's
Cool.
one that I've watched and one that I actually like.
Yeah, and let's just dive right in now. So, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about the show, what it's about?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Sight Unseen is a conventional television cop drama, but with a little bit of a twist. Tess Avery, she is a top homicide detective, and she's forced to quit her job when she puts her partner in danger. And she puts her partner in danger one day during a car chase and a standoff because she starts to lose her sight. And she's forced to reckon with the fact that she is losing her sight and can no longer be a police officer. And so throughout the course of the first season and into the second season, she's become a consultant. And the way that she deals with her blindness on the job is that she has a sight guide. And that character's name is Sunny. Tess puts an earpiece in her ear, and she also wears a little camera on her lapel. And through the camera and through the earpiece, Tess and Sunny are able to talk. And Sunny is agoraphobic. So as you mentioned off the top, there's two disability stories within Sight Unseen, and so it's all about that kind of back and forth between these two women, these two female characters, as they help solve crimes together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool concept, and obviously, people use those visual assistance apps a little bit like this, although they might not help me, fight crime. So a little bit more
Yeah.
of a specialized team here. So we've got a little intel as well about season 2. So I'm just curious, like, how do you feel about it? I mean, does it continue the arc of season 1 the way you would hope, or what can you tell us previewing season 2?
Yeah, absolutely. During the course of season one, Sunny was put in a precarious position about something that happened in her past, and I don't want to give that away,
Yeah.
but that certainly carries over into the first episode of season two. Also, what I find very interesting in the first episode of the second season is how much Sunny has become more of a DV guide. She is telling Tess, "This is in front of you," and Tess is deferring to Sunny for descriptions about the crime scene, as opposed to the partner that Tess is walking around with, who is
Hmm.
sighted. She's deferring to Sunny a lot, and I found that was a little bit interesting because you would think that your partner on in the crime scene would be the one that would describe things to you, but they're having Sunny do it. But that's just part of the story, and that's part of the character development, and I like that. And I also, I don't know whether the cast talks about this, but the fact that the creators of the show, the our Karen and Nicolene Trubetzoy,
Mhm.
who have made Canadian television in the past. And Karen, in particular, is a member of the partially sighted audience, and so she's basing her own experiences on what Tess is dealing with in her life on the show.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for sharing. And we had a little preview as well of season 2, right from the stars of the show. Let's take a listen to what Dolly Lewis and Agam Darshi had to say themselves about what to expect from season 2. What can we expect from the new season? Can you preview it? Tell us what you're most excited about.
Oh my gosh, there's so much to look forward to, and I'm so excited for people to check it out this season. We picked up kind of where we left off with some really high stakes situations, if people are familiar with how season 1 ended. But the showrunners and all of the writers, they really upped the ante this season. So there is a lot more action because, we've established who we are. We get to go much more in depth into our relationships. And what else am I missing?
New characters.
Yeah.
There's also some series regular characters that have been added to the group. So we're seeing a lot more of Bonnet this year as well, played by Roger Cross. So yeah, there's just everything goes deeper.
Having heard that, having seen the first episode of season 2, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, they mentioned Bennett, who is Roger Cross, and he's a great character actor out of Vancouver, where they filmed the show. And there's a particular reason why he's involved in the second season of the show that ties into a bit of a conspiracy theory from the first season. So it does make sense to have him part of the cast and have that character be a little bit more prevalent in the second season of the show for sure.
Fantastic. So obviously, Tessa's character development was really instrumental in season 1, one of the most overarching themes, just with adjusting to her diagnosis, learning how to kind of work with her disability. Dolly Agam spoke about how the production team worked with CNIB and viewers of the show to gather feedback, and here's what they had to say. Let's talk a little bit about the show's efforts for representation on screen, diverse representation. So important in this day and age, especially.
Yeah, in terms of at least, sight loss, which is a huge focus of the show. It was amazing to hear Kat and Nico's experience. They're the co-showrunners. They had been connected with the National Institute of the Blind here in Canada and had gotten amazing feedback from people in that community about, how the show reflected their experience in season 1, things that they wished they could have learned about, on the show. And so we ended up including something that they told Kat and Nico about directly, and Kat and Nico loved it and thought it was a great idea for, throwing another curveball at Tess. So getting their feedback and being able to incorporate that directly has been a really special process.
Are you able to share? Are you able to share a little bit about some of that feedback you received? Like, I'm always curious, what does the mainstream audience sort of wonder about vision loss? Maybe what do you think they've taken away about vision loss after watching the show?
I haven't had the chance to speak directly to too many audience members, but I have gotten a couple of incredible letters from people who have been able to tune into the show who deal with sight loss in their lives. And that's been really, really gratifying because when you create something like this, you're in a little bit of a bubble. You're working really hard and it's you on set in this container. And then a long time can pass before people get to watch it. And you don't get to see how it affects them. So getting that feedback from them directly was really meaningful. Just that they felt represented.
Greg, how valuable do you feel that the community has the opportunity not only be represented in the show, but also to be actively involved in how this character is portrayed?
Oh, I think it's important. I mean, Grant, I'm sure that you've talked about this before, that representation matters. And if you can have a member of the blind community, you create a show where the star of the show, the lead character, is supposed to be blind or partially sighted, then how about we get somebody from the community actually be in that role? And so Dolly Lewis, who is a member of the partially sighted community, is playing Tess Avery. And I think
Mhm.
that's really important. And, it was great to hear that the showrunners went to the CNIB for feedback and got feedback. And before the show even when it was still in the development phase, the showrunners reached out to AMI. They wanted to get some feedback. They said that they were making this show. There was going to have a member of the partially sighted community, not only in the lead role but the lead character, and they wanted some feedback. And so there were folks at AMI that reached out to them and gave them some feedback because the showrunners really wanted to get it right. They wanted to get that
Mhm.
representation. They didn't want to get called out for doing things wrong. So I really appreciate the fact that they reached out to the CNIB for feedback when they were going into season 2.
Yeah, it's interesting because that really stood out to me. That it's almost courageous to take this on, like a totally new concept for the show, because I
Yeah.
think it, you know, maybe people in the community can be a bit protective, and I
Mm,
totally understand that. And I would just be afraid of having a lot of criticism. So it seems like they just were really open and created a fairly authentic character. So that's
yeah.
pretty cool. Now I know we, touched on this up front, but did you have any doubt kind of going into watching the show about how the character with vision loss could be authentically represented, maybe even agoraphobia as well? And was there anything that either surprised you or was done particularly well?
Yeah, I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised because I kind of go in with this jaded look on conventional
Mhm.
TV that a show will over explain something or go out of their way to explain something. And so I was really pleasantly surprised where when we met Tess and in the very first episode in the first season, you started to see her dealing with vision loss and having a lot of questions. And also the visual cues that the show made. That's something that we haven't mentioned is that the camera will cut to what Tess's view is of the world, and you see more of that in the second season as well. A blurry screen or
Mhm.
not being able to focus. There's some color variations as well when you're watching the show to signify that. So yeah, I was a little bit worried that it was going to be over the top and kind of beat you over the head like rah rah. We've got someone
Mhm.
who's partially sighted, and aren't we great for creating a character? But it wasn't like that at all. It's a straight ahead detective drama, and two of the people solving the crimes happen to be members of the disability community.
Perfect. And while we're still on that topic of representation, let's play this clip of Dolly and Agam explaining the development of Tessa's disability in the next season.
Well, in terms of the feedback they got from from people at the National Institute for the Blind, in particular, they were interested in including Charles Bonnet syndrome, which is something that a lot of people with sight loss deal with, that not many people who are sighted know anything about. And it's a
Mhm.
very interesting neurological kind of phenomenon that takes place, and can really mess with people because it can just come out of the blue and they don't know why they're suddenly seeing what they're seeing when normally they can't see. So in terms of bringing that in, it was great to talk to Kat about what that would be like, how that would show up in Tess's body, how that would shape how stories progress, like our relationship. How does Sunny, deal with that, if Tess is trying to keep it from her or is asking for her help with it and she
Mm.
doesn't know what's going on?
Overall, what do you think about the development process for Tessa's character?
Yeah, we see that in the very first episode. She mentioned the Charles Bonnet syndrome, and you see the beginnings of that. And Tess is confirming, to Sunny, can you see what I'm seeing? And Sunny doesn't see it. And so they do mention Charles Bonnet syndrome, and that sent me to Google to learn more about it. And so from the description that I read on the various websites, they've nailed it with regard to her condition and what could possibly happen further with her eyesight in the second season of the show.
Yeah, I think it's really just about addressing people's fear of even talking about this at all. Like, there's all kinds of things that we mask on a daily basis, or that people are self conscious about themselves. related to. It's at least part of the public consciousness. But I think disability has always been just this incredibly fearful thing that's taboo to talk about. And having a character that's, like you said, not over the top, but still kind of in your face, the show deals with it as a primary subject. That's going to be really critical for at least opening the conversation. There is a whole other level of representation here. We've touched on it a little bit since Sunny has agoraphobia. Really interesting for me because it's an invisible disability. And what's really interesting to me is how well they form a team together where they're each kind of, able to support each other a little bit. Complement each other, maybe we'll say. Agam and Dolly spoke with me about that as well. Let's listen to a little clip. We've talked about representation of sight loss, but also the character of Sunny, who has agoraphobia, and again, maybe you can touch base on this. That's also disability representation there in terms of kind of a hidden disability. And is there maybe a connection between those characters or that representation from a disability perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think people, the conversation around mental health is so strong these days. And, it's agoraphobia in particular is so interesting because in a way we sort of pat ourselves on the back when we can be a hermit and be inside our homes for days at a time because it's so easy to be isolated these days. We have apps, we're connected to the big wide world out there. We have Uber Eats. You don't really need to leave until eventually you realize, oh, maybe this is a problem, and so I think just the exploration of Sunny's trauma and her ability to really leave her home and to just how paralyzed she feels is really it's a very common actually experience that a lot of people have, and I think just the fact that these are two women who are dealing with very different kinds of disabilities, very different kinds of experiences, but they also bond because of that. They're really connected for their compassion towards each other and for their desire to overcome this really difficult part of their lives.
Just letting viewers maybe who are experiencing something similar, which is, as you said, so common in this day and age, just to know that they're not alone as well. That's really valuable. Well, agoraphobia is one of those invisible disabilities, and the show really does cover a wide spectrum of disability. Do you feel, Greg, that you've learned some new aspects about the disability community through watching the show?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially the agoraphobia. They talk about Agam talks about mental health and the trauma that is involved in Sunny. And while they were giving that answer, I was thinking, while Sunny is Tess's eyes to the world, Tess is also Sunny's eyes to the world because she's in her apartment all of the time. She's getting to see the outside world through her job and through helping Tess with these crimes. So it's a really interesting dynamic that I hadn't thought about before. And what is interesting is that some people may say, agoraphobia, you can just kind of quote unquote get over it. Well, there is a character on the show that is trying to get Sunny to come out of her apartment, and he's not having any luck. And there was a part of me that's saying, just leave her alone. Like, you don't understand. You think you're helping, but you're actually hurting and making things worse. So that's what I learned. I learned a lot more about agoraphobia that I didn't know before I started watching this show.
Such a great point. So Dolly's character Tess is a detective, as we know in the show. Once she starts losing her sight, obviously, as you've mentioned, she's paired with Sunny through that visual guide app. That's where Agam's character Sunny comes in, and the two actresses filmed season 1 and season 2 in 2 different studios at different times, so they didn't have each other to react and rely on for those visual cues, that kind of thing. They talked a bit about what the filming process was like in this clip. Tess and Sunny's relationship is primarily through an app, a visual guidance app. So I'm just curious, what was that like as actors? not kind of having that body language all the time, sort of riffing off of each other without maybe the full physical presence there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of trust, just trusting that you, your imagination can fill in the blanks. Um, and I think it's also trusting the writing and trusting that that's going to be enough to move you as an actor. And trusting the person who's reading the off camera lines. I was lucky enough to have someone who read all an actual actor reading Tessa's lines off camera for me. So that was fantastic. And so was Dolly.
Yeah.
She also had somebody doing that for her. And so, yeah, it's sort of a mishmash. It's just trusting the process of what it is, but also knowing that we know each other enough that we felt like we were able to take on that challenge. I think in season 1, both Dolly and I had spent some time, a number of weeks in the first episode on set together, really getting to know each other and really liking each other. Like there was a genuine friendship there, and I genuinely really
What a
adore this
relief.
person. So I think just, having to go into these scenes where you don't have your scene partner there with you, it is a lot of imagination and but just trusting that your instincts will take over.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And that's a really good point too, is that it's not so much actually just working around that sort of lack of physical presence and having someone who's able to read the lines off camera. That's super helpful. But I'd imagine a really big part of your roles, especially with some of the issues you're tackling, is that like friendship and really having to have a very deep trust between you, bond of trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think something that we also worked on is this year more than ever, we really sort of checked in with each other because we were moving so fast, trying to get the season. And so, Dolly and I we had a lot of phone calls being like, okay, have you read the next episode? How are you going to be saying this line? What do you think you're going to be doing in this moment? Just so that I was aware and vice versa.
Yeah.
Greg, were you surprised to find out how they filmed the show? And while you were watching, did you ever wonder what was happening behind the scenes, how they got through it?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that question, Grant, because the chemistry is so good on the show that you forget that they're actually, that they don't actually film together. And chemistry is so important in a movie or a television show or really any media. And they do chemistry reads and that type of thing to make sure that the stars are getting along and are a good fit. So yeah, that's one of the things about the show that makes it very interesting, as well as these two characters who are so integral to each other aren't even in the same room. So yeah, I'm glad that you asked that question. It really gives some insight into how you make a TV show and how you make a TV show work when you have characters that are, you've got somebody else reading into that actor's ear because it isn't the person that you're co-starring on the show with.
And honestly, for people who have never used visual guide apps, like that chemistry is not for granted, even just in the moment. You really have to kind of work hard together to get through it at first. That's really not something viewers should take for granted. So that's really cool, that trust that they built up between the two of them. These two are obviously close friends, and it definitely came through in their interview. This next clip is of them talking about one of their favorite memories from filming season 2. Is there any, I don't know, highlight like that behind the scenes, either from this season or the last, the entire show that you'd like to share that maybe people aren't aware of? I don't know, some kind of funny moment or your favorite moment filming.
Oh my gosh. It's such a blur looking back. We were so busy.
I mean, what we did differently this year was that our studios were side by side to each other. And
Yeah.
so I was filming while Dolly was filming in the police department. And I always felt like I was missing out because all the cast was with her. And so whenever, and vice versa. So we would go visit each other on set. And sometimes we'd be there and we just like give each other a quick hug and be like, how's it going? And just stay as long as we can. And then sure enough, like there would be a PA from, our sets coming up, finding us, and then like talking into the mic and being like, okay, I found her. And they would have to usher us back to our own set. So I think
we were cutting class or something.
Yeah, it totally felt that way.
Oh, that's really sweet. That is really sweet and a wonderful concept for a show. And it sounds like we've got a fantastic new season premiering. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk a little bit about Sight Unseen. I have one more question, which is about your TV viewing preferences. So, do you sit down at a specific time to watch on CTV or whatever channel? Or do you binge watch, or do you just watch once it comes out on the streaming app? What are your viewing habits like?
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of that, Grant. I'm still old school, so I do have basic cable and pay for basic cable. But the caveat is that I use my PVR to record so that I can zip through the commercials. So I definitely will be recording Sight Unseen, and then I'll be going through at my leisure, watching it whenever I want to and going through those commercials.
Greg, there's no better time, I feel like, than this time, the winter, to binge watch on some shows, check out some new shows. What are you watching now? What are you excited about?
Oh my gosh, so much. I just finished watching the first season of Skeleton Crew on Disney Plus. Disney Plus is, you have to pay extra for it, but I will say that the described video, if you're a member of the blind and partially sighted community, is fantastic. Skeleton Crew is the latest Star Wars series. It's 8 episodes, and Jude Law plays a bad guy. He plays a pirate, and there's a spaceship, and there's droids, and there's kids, but it's not really a kid show. So if you're a fan of Star Wars like I am and you tune into everything that they make, I do have to say that Skeleton Crew is really good.
Okay.
And then over on Apple TV Plus, the second season of Severance has just begun. And Severance is all about it's this technology where you have a part of your brain that's been removed so that when you go to work, you don't know about your personal life. And when you leave work, you don't think about your work life and you don't know about the people that you work with every day. So it's this really kind of weird dystopian show. It's Ben Stiller is an executive producer on that show. It won rave reviews in its first season. And like I said, the second season has just dropped on Apple TV Plus. And again, the described video on Apple TV Plus is stellar. So those are just kind of two shows that I would recommend right now.
Brilliant. I don't know that we have time for this in the show, but I'm just curious. Do you check out the described video, like when you watch a show, just out of curiosity, usually, or?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, especially if I know that I'm going to be talking about them. I always like to double check and just make sure that there is DV first of all, because if I'm coming on a show to talk about a show, I want to make sure that it's got it, because I won't recommend something that doesn't. And I also want to know how the companies are doing with regard to their described video. I want to know whether it's good or not. So yeah, I like to do that homework.
That's really cool. I'll have to go to you for my TV viewing ideas in the future. We have cable at my family home whenever I go for a visit. And you know what? It's still such a novelty to
Yeah.
sit down at 7 p.m. and you feel like, oh, this is coming out on my TV like live somehow, even though it's not actually. That can be really exciting. Well, whatever way you watch, you can catch Sight Unseen Season 2 premiering at 10 p.m. Eastern on CTV, and the entirety of the Season 1 is available on Crave, and Crave also includes DV for that show and many others. I'd like to thank Greg Davids for speaking with me today. A huge thank you to Dolly Lewis, Agam Darshi, and the Sight Unseen team for helping to arrange this interview. The Pulse is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, with new episodes twice a week. Thanks so much for listening. I'm your host, Grant Hardy.